Greetings. I want to talk with you about 8 ways to enlist music leaders for your church. My name is Richard Dickson, and I've been a minister of music, music director, music worship leader since 1982. And I wanted to share with you today 8 ways that can help your church enlist music leaders to assist in your congregational worship. These are not all the ideas that there are. They may or may not work for you. But in my experience, these are some of the ideas that have worked or that I've seen work for others. So I wanted to share them with you today in the hopes that perhaps they would help your church in enlisting the worship leaders that you need. Down through the years of ministry, I've worked in primarily what could be considered small to medium churches. And I've found some of these methods useful in helping me to enlist worship leaders in the churches that I've served. So let's dive right in. The first of these ways to enlist worship leaders sounds very obvious, but I have found that it is very useful, and if one tries any other way without this particular method, I am not sure how successful those enlisted leaders will be in leading your worship music ministry. The first of these ways is to pray and trust God. It sounds really obvious for churches and ministers to approach this process in this way. But sometimes we fail to do that. And though it seems to be very obvious, without prayer and trusting God, those leaders that we try to enlist may not be the best fit and the best leaders for our churches. Pray and trust God. In one of the churches that I served, we were beginning a new worship service, and we needed some additional musicians for this service. I was encouraged to contact some schools and others to see if there were those who wanted to come for the experience. I would just say that that's probably not going to happen. It may, but I'll get to that in a few moments. But what I found, it wasn't those contacts that I made that brought in the musicians that we needed for that service. Over time, as we prayed, and as we trusted God to provide the leaders that we needed, I discovered that some of the musicians that we needed were in our church, or people who were in our church were related to musicians who came and showed an interest in playing in our group. Over that time, we had a keyboard. A young lady came wanting to play the keyboard. We had one of my choir members, her son-in-law was a fantastic bass guitar player. We had several singers that were volunteering to come and share with us. We had a guitar player, a young man who was in the church who was willing to play the guitar while we started up. And in the church we had a drummer that was willing to play the drums for us. And over time, as the service grew, we got to where we had additional guitar players who came up, additional singers who came into the ministry of our church, and we actually ended up with 3 drummers, 2 of which were of a studio caliber. So we had some great musicians that came and wanted to be a part of our church's worship ministry, because we just trusted God to provide those players, those singers that we needed to serve in that church in that time. The second thing that I would encourage you to do is to look out over your congregation, to see those who are involved in singing, who are involved in the music and just have a heart for music. Those are the people that I would look to and begin to invite, maybe to come and join you on the platform and face the congregation, be a team leader, or just to stand there and experience what it's like to stand in front of a congregation and sing. And then to provide them with training and opportunities to sing and to lead the music in your worship. It's a great opportunity for you to enlist a music leader, your first music leader, or additional music leaders. I would encourage you to do that. Look at your congregation and see who's there and who has a heart for music and worship through music. As you discover these people, I would suggest that you perhaps look for conferences or seminars that they could attend. Maybe there's another music leader in your community that could provide them with some guidance or some training, basic training. There are some YouTube videos that you can go to find help for those people who have shown an interest in leading the music in your church. A third way that you can find music worship leadership is by doing the old-fashioned survey. Sometimes this can be the printed out survey. Sometimes it can be a more informal survey where you just communicate with the people and talk with them one-on-one or in family groups, depending on the size of your church. And what you're looking for are people who have been involved in music. Do you have children, youth, or adults who have taken piano lessons? Do you have members who used to sing in a high school chorus? People who participate in local bands, play guitars with local groups, any kind of musical involvement, musical theater, anybody who has any kind of musical outlet that they're already involved in could be great candidates for helping you in leading music in your worship ministry. I would suggest, however, as you find these music leaders, that you might perhaps give them an audition. You will want to find out their level. There are those who would say they can play the piano, but they struggle to keep time, or someone who says they can sing and their mother loves their voice. And we want to encourage them to sing and to play and find ways to encourage them, but they may not be the best fit for leading in your services, particularly at this time. They might just need a little bit more training, a little bit more in practice. What else can I say? A fourth way of finding music worship leaders for your church is to ask. Ask yourself, ask others in your congregation this simple question: who do you know? One church that I served, our main accompanist, she was our organist, our choir accompanist, and one morning she did something that she had never done before. She called in sick. On Sunday morning, I get a phone call from her husband, and he told me that she would not be able to make it that day. A little later, I was able to talk with her. One of the questions I asked her was, do you know anybody who can fill in? And she gave me the name of a lady who had played at that church several years before. They had moved on to another church, serving and working in other churches, but I gave her a call, and she was available to come and play for us that day. And then as our organist, accompanist, found the bad news that she had cancer and went through those treatments and was out a lot sick, even to where at some point in that journey she passed away. But that lady that she had mentioned that Sunday morning continued to play the piano and served as my accompanist. And she wasn't an organist, but she was a piano player. Did a fantastic job at the piano. She and her husband came back into the church, got involved, and as far as I know, she's still serving by playing the piano in that church. So sometimes it pays to just simply ask somebody, who do you know? And find out who those people are who could come and help you with your music in your church. The fifth thing is very similar to that, but instead of just asking the people in your church, perhaps you could go to local musicians, to other people in your community, and ask them that same question. Do you know anyone who could help us with our music? Go to piano teachers, go to high school chorus leaders, go to local musicians, people who play in bands, and just anybody that you would trust to know someone. If you have a community college close by or anything like that, just find those musicians in your community, and if perhaps they might be willing and able to help. But if not, maybe they know somebody who would be available and could come and help you in your church's music ministry. A sixth way of finding music worship leaders for your church is to look to your students. Some of your students are involved in band. Some of your students may be taking piano lessons. Some of your students may sing in a chorus or with musical theater or something like that. You might find them on your survey, but look to your students and find out if any of them play an instrument. Do they play guitar? Do they play the piano? Do they sing? And then, even though they may not have the level of experience that you want at the moment, you can help provide training, encourage them in their training, in their musical growth. I remember in churches that I served that we once had what was called Youth Sunday, and the youth ministry would enlist a youth to preach the sermon, and he would come alongside the pastor, and the pastor would help him craft a sermon to deliver on Youth Sunday. A musically inclined youth would be invited to come and lead the congregational singing. If there was a youth choir, they would provide the music, the choral music for that worship service. Or if there was a soloist, a singer who was interested in singing a solo in the service. And these services gave those young people an opportunity to use gifts that God had given to them in serving their church and to see the opportunities and possibilities for serving in their own church. They didn't have to go to another church to serve. These were just wonderful opportunities. And sometimes there would be within the church a piano player, a young piano player who could kind of work through or get through the hymns for that youth Sunday. And sometimes you have really good youth piano players. I wouldn't want to discount that either. But I would encourage you to look to your students and see if there's a possibility of some young man or some young lady out there in your congregation who might have the gifts and abilities in music that God has given, and they may be just waiting for an opportunity to start that process of becoming a leader, a music worship leader in your church. Definitely encourage you to do that. As you find the students in your church, one of the things that you would want to think about doing is also encouraging them. Provide them the opportunity to go to music camps. I live in the state of Georgia, and the Georgia Baptist Mission Board provides a yearly camp for young musicians to come and grow in their skills and their abilities. Sometimes there are other opportunities. Perhaps it would be possible to supplement piano lessons, or even more so voice lessons, or having a voice coach helping those young musicians to connect with perhaps a music director from another church who can help them learn the skills that they need to work in your church, to serve in your church, and would be a great opportunity for your church. A seventh way that you might find music worship leaders is to look around your community. You can go to your colleges, which are nearby. You can go to your high school, go to the band directors, the chorus leaders in your high schools, and find out from them if there are any of their students who might be willing and able to play. Now, I would caution that this may cost a little money. There was one summer that I needed a bass player for our Vacation Bible School. We were providing a live group to lead our music in Vacation Bible School, and I needed a bass player. So I contacted the local high school, and there was a young man who had a great amount of skill and a great amount of ability. But in order to have him come in, we did have to give him a little stipend, a little honorarium, a little bit of pay in order for him to come and to give his time practicing with us, practicing on his own, and then showing up for the 5 nights of Vacation Bible School. We were taking up a part of his summer. We were taking up a part of his Sunday afternoons. And so we needed to do that for him. So that might be a possibility, but be aware of that. You might also find within your community retired musicians, retired ministers of music. I know of one retired minister of music who is serving in a church not far from where I'm sitting right now. He comes in on Sunday, works with their church musicians, their choir, has a great ministry going on there as a retired minister of music, working part-time in that church. Perhaps there are some retired piano teachers. Perhaps there's some retired college professors, and the list could go on, but those people may be in your community and may be willing to help you in your music ministry. They may need a little bit of pay. There might need to be a little bit budgeted for them, but it is a possibility for getting someone into your church. And then finally, in my list, the 8th item is to approach other churches. Find out if they have musicians who would be willing to come and help your church out. They may not can come every Sunday. The music director at their church may not be able to let them go every week, but perhaps those musicians could come once a month. Perhaps there could be a rotation of musicians from a variety of sources, from other churches, from other ministries that could come into your church and provide that leadership on a rotational type basis. And that would provide a way of having a music ministry. This too might need to have a little bit of budget set aside for it, but it is a possibility. Well, that's the 8 things that I had in my mind as I sat down to record this video. But I want to remind you that the first thing is the absolute most important, and that is to spend time talking to God and asking Him to lead you to the best choice, to lead you in the way you need to go to enlist the right person in God's eyes to lead in your music worship ministry. And then when you've done that, to just trust Him to provide. Keep your eyes open, but trust that God is going to place in your church the person or people that you need to be a part of your ministry in your local church. I want to thank you for your time. If you have any questions, anything, any comments, if you have additional ideas, I encourage you to leave them in the comments below, and just keep looking up. God bless you in your church, in your ministry, and in your life. Blessings.